Just like to begin by thanking everyone that has helped me along the way. So that would be all of my classmates, teammates, and people in the Matt squad. My partner Anthea, my previous partner Abhishek, and our coach Matt for all of your support throughout this season. Judges, you guys ready? Opponents ready? Teammate? My time starts now. My partner and I stand in strong negation of the resolution. Resolve, cryptocurrencies are more beneficial than harmful. I would like to start with the definition. Cryptocurrency. According to Investopedia, a cryptocurrency is a digital or virtual currency that uses cryptography for security. Our framework is a cost-benefit analysis of the current status quo of stakeholders in today's debate. Contention 1, crime. Subpoint A, hacking. In 2014, hackers stole 850,000 bitcoins, equivalent to $7.2 billion from Mt. Gox. Since the creation of cryptocurrencies, there have been numerous instances of similar attacks on cryptocurrencies. Types of hacks range from 51% attacks, stealing private key information, and more. 51% attacks have happened to many small-time cryptocurrencies, and according to FICAP University researcher Hassan Mahmoud, even Ethereum Classic, the second largest cryptocurrency, is vulnerable to such an attack. In fact, a $1.5 million investment is able to clear the $2 billion network's hash power and profit $1 billion. CNBC reported that in 2018, $1.7 billion was hacked from cryptocurrencies, which was 3.6 times higher than that of 2017, indicating that hackers are not slowing down. Putting this in comparison with banks, according to Russian cybersecurity firm Kaspersky Lab, the total amount of money stolen from banks worldwide over 2 years was $1 billion. Subpoint B, criminal usage. Anonymous cryptocurrencies have facilitated international crime and terrorism. A 2018 study by the University of Sydney showed that $76 billion or 46% of Bitcoin transactions involved illicit activity. However, the study claims that the use of Bitcoin is decreasing, and more private coins such as Monero, Tether, and Dash are being used increasingly, making the activities fully anonymous, as public keys hold no information on the user. Similarly, an article by the New York Times noted that terrorist group Hamas has also begun resorting to cryptocurrencies that provide donors with a new public key every time they donate, making their identities untraceable. Therefore, cryptocurrency has facilitated the growth of criminal and terrorist activities, supporting immoral activities of rape, assault, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and countless other human rights violations that cost countries billions of dollars and millions of lives, not to mention political and economic instability that further weakens nations. Contention 2, anti-regulation and volatility. There is a reason why every major economy in the world has a central bank. That is, to prevent and mitigate the effects of financial instability. Central banks help stabilize the economy through stimulus, expansionary or deflationary monetary policies. With cryptocurrencies, governments are no longer able to do so. This means in a world with cryptocurrencies, the recession such as that of 2008 would turn into global depressions, and the world would recede back into 19th century economic chaos and instability. This is evident in how cryptocurrencies are extremely unpredictable and can fluctuate at unbelievable rates due to their lack of a central government to inject or take away money. For example, according to CoinMarketCap, in 2018, over $700 million, worth 80% of all cryptocurrency, was wiped off the entire market. The con team believes that, considering the volatility and unregulated nature of cryptocurrency is unable to serve as a viable form of currency for transactions or storing value. Contention 3, environment. According to researchers at the University of Bari, Italy, Bitcoin produced 13% of greenhouse gas emissions in 2017. An article found in the Journal of Nature showed that, given current rates, Bitcoin mining will produce enough greenhouse gases to warm the planet by 2 degrees Celsius by 2033. In fact, according to a study by the University of New Mexico, for every dollar in value for a Bitcoin transaction, 49 cents worth of environmental and health costs were incurred in the United States alone. Costs to China per Bitcoin were already, per dollar Bitcoin transaction was 37 cents, indicating that worldwide, environmental and medical harm already outweigh any economic benefits of the currency. Furthermore, these costs are only expected to rise as we reach ever closer to that 2-degree threshold of irreversible damage, and adopting cryptocurrencies will only cost the global economy as a whole. Again, our reasons have been on crime in that users are at risk of having their money stolen by hackers, and that criminals and terrorists are using cryptocurrencies privately, the unstable value of cryptocurrencies that can cause users to lose their money overnight, and the environmental costs which already outweigh any benefits and are irreversible. Thus, we proudly negate the resolution. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I'm not going to give a thank you speech on lazy, so let's just cut to the chase. All right. Everyone ready? Opponents? My time starts now. Because Victoria and I believe that cryptocurrency is more beneficial than harmful, we stand proudly on proposition. 2 observations. First, cryptocurrency is decentralized digital currency secured through encryption techniques to control the creation of monetary units and to verify or transfer funds, according to Harvard 2018. Observation 2, it is not enough for Kant to simply list out harms, but it needs to prove to us the implicit causations of these harms uniquely happening under their world. And with that in mind, we argue that accessibility will be the biggest impact today because we will be the only team who bring progressive changes to the poorest population in and around the world. 3 contentions. First, helping the unbanked. Angela Rediger in July 13, 2018 reported on Hacker Noon that crypto could be used as a used to provide a financial identity for the 40% of adults who are unbanked around the world. These 2 billion adults cite barriers such as fees, distance to banks, lack of necessary documentation, and most commonly, not having enough access to warrant an account to begin with. Medium in 2019 wrote that inability to access banking services made it impossible for such people to do simple things such as pay water and gas bills. Getting financial services to the unbanked is of great importance as a way of improving the quality of life for these 1.7 billion people. Access to financial services such as loans and mortgages allow them to even start businesses or buy a house, crucial for alleviating poverty. Contention 2, hyperinflation. Cryptocurrency is independent from the political gamble of a country, meaning that individuals will be able to use it as an alternative way when facing financial turmoil. Angela Rediger also reported that Bitcoin and crypto Bitcoin and crypto have become a lifeline for people in numerous African nations where the collapse of their economies and financial systems have made business and life all but unattainable for many. Not only does it give them the means to live on a day-to-day basis, but a growing number of citizens are using crypto to give them a savings buffer, such as in Zimbabwe, where the hyperinflation and quick collapse of the banking system in 2008 sent the country into an economic tailspin. Moses Rendon, the Associate Director of the Americas Program at the Center for Strategic International Studies in Washington, wrote in 2018 that it is extremely difficult to make any payments in the collapsed state of Venezuela. Cash is scarce, and traditional payment networks are so overloaded that it regularly takes hours and good luck to pay the equivalent of $4 to a taxi driver. As a result, a growing number of merchants, from grocery stores to restaurants to utility outlets, are accepting a variety of cryptocurrencies as payments such as Dash and Bitcoin. Initiatives such as Eat BCH and Bitcoin Venezuela are also limiting the suffering of the thousands of people by receiving cryptocurrency donations from other parts of the world, which are then used to buy and distribute food on the streets of Venezuela. Bitcoin Venezuela, for instance, a nonprofit organization, feeds about 2,000 people on a daily basis with Bitcoin donations. With only a few months since being founded, EBCH now has about 18 different food distribution centers in 6 states across Venezuela. EBCH's model is also being replicated in South Sudan. Contention 3, remittances. UNESCO reports that migrants are losing $25 billion each year through remittances fees alone. The World Bank in 2017 reported that the global average cost of sending $200 is 7.1% in the first quarter of 2018. Sub-Saharan Africa remains the most expensive place to send money to, where the average cost is 9.4%, almost 10. In comparison, the transaction fee for Bitcoin now is around $0.4 US per transaction, independent of how large the transaction itself is. This gives us 2 impacts. First, we think it's principally justified to give back the hard-earned money and stop it from going to the bankers, who essentially did nothing in obtaining these monies and working in the first place. And we think that to begin with, we should not take money away from the already poorest population around the earth. Second, we think remittances can be instrumental for supporting people living in developing countries. Globally, in 2016, people living abroad sent an estimated of $574 billion back to their home countries. For instance, Nepal received an estimated of 31% of its GDP in remittances, according to a Pew Research Center analysis of the World Bank data for 2016. Judges, for the global poor, for all those who are entrenched in poverty and cannot shake free the shackles of poverty, we are very proud to propose. Thank you.
Ready? Time starts now. I would like to have the first question. What cryptocurrencies are they using, and are they currently using that to buy food in Venezuela right now?
They're using, some examples include Bitcoin and Dash, but they accept a variety of...
Do you have any statistics on that?
What do you mean by...
Do you have any evidence?
Yeah, 2,000 people are being fed by Bitcoin Venezuela every day.
Okay. You have the question.
Alright. So you said that because of cryptocurrency mining, about like a few metric tons of carbon dioxide are being released, right?
I said that it's responsible for 13% of global greenhouse emissions in 2017.
How is it 13% if the use of Bitcoin's limit is 69 million metric, whereas in total, it's 9.795 gigatons.
I don't know where your evidence is from, but mine is from the University of Bari, Italy.
I just Googled right now.
Just Google. Okay.
Okay, sure, your turn.
Are your impacts in the present or in the future?
May I ask why you're asking this question?
Because you're claiming that in Venezuela they're using cryptocurrencies. However, the majority of people are still relying upon.
Yeah, they're saving 2,000 people every day as of right now. So I guess that means the answer is it's current impact in the present.
Okay. You have a question.
Okay. You talked about 51% attacks, right?
Yes.
How exactly does that work?
So the cryptocurrencies currently rely on the proof of work method, which relies on computing power. And if any party can get 51% of computing power, they can control the cryptocurrency and it's essentially.
Proof of work, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Your turn.
Okay. If Visa is conducting 24,000 transactions per second and Bitcoin only conducts 7 transactions per second, how are you going to scale it up such that your impacts can be?
Okay, here's the thing, right? Look at the comparison here. On our world, sure, transactions take longer, but we think it's far better than just taking money straight away from these poor people to begin with, right? In their world, sure, Visa transactions are fast, but they cost so much internationally, right? It gave me on average, it costs 7-point-something%. We think the comparative in our world is you have to plan longer, you still have more money. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
At Bitcoin's peak, when it was trying to expand to scale up in 2017, it reached its peak, the transaction fee was actually 20%, which is twice as much as they're saying.
Yeah, citing a peak does not help your case because of
right, but that means that there's issues with scalability as Bitcoin does not have the necessary infrastructure that the US dollar does, that existing fiat currencies.
What infrastructure are you talking about?
Western Union, all of these, that you call these intermediaries, yes, they have higher fees in this instance, but to reach your impacts, you can't scale it up that much. Bitcoin wasn't even able to scale anywhere near what is necessary to help Venezuela on a national scale, and it was already reaching 20% transaction fees.
Do you have any evidence for this fee scaling up during the Venezuela crisis?
If you're trying to scale it up, naturally there will be increase.
So no, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Opponents ready? Partner ready? My time starts now. Onto their framework. They tell you that we should judge this motion through a status quo framework because the motion says are more beneficial than harmful, and thus we shouldn't really look to future impacts. And their contention 1, 2, and 3 have all been on future impacts. In their own evidence from Hacker Noon, it says it could help 40% of the unbanked that are, and it's actually not helping the unbanked as they have given no statistics on how many people are using it for banking services. Secondly, M-Pesa is what is being used in Africa and it is not using cryptocurrencies. M-Pesa has been widely spread in 7 nations and has 12 million users in its first year. Moreover, they never really responded to the scalability point, as Visa transactions have a current scalability of 24,000 transactions per second, while Bitcoin is only feasible to do 7. So to reach any of their impacts today, they need to prove to you that Bitcoin is scalable in some way. However, they provide no response to that. On to their contention too about hyperinflation. Currently, there are only 3 nations with hyperinflation, which are Zimbabwe, South Sudan, and Venezuela. Thus, they only impact on 3 nations. And secondly, we already have, for example, the US dollar that has much more infrastructure and has a government that's like regulating it, but they never give up. However, we see that without governments, without fiscal and monetary policies, this means that we could not prevent depression. And moving on, they give you no evidence on how many people are actually adopting it in Zimbabwe, and that was their only example. However, with volatility, people shouldn't be adopting this because in 2020, according to Forbes, volatility has been its highest in months. It has been at around 10% in 2020 January. Onto their contention 3. They tell you that people are using cryptocurrencies in utility outlets. However, they give you no evidence on how many people are using it. However, M-Pesa is currently being used to buy like a lot of commodities, and it has a transaction rate of 1.5%, which is much lower than cryptocurrencies, which have an extra conversion fee, which I will talk about later. Moving on to the contention 4 about Bitcoin Venezuela. This is only one organization, and only 2% of non-profit organizations actually accept cryptocurrencies because, firstly, they're not as transparent as you think, and you can't really show transparency. Thus, there's a lot of still the problem of corruption. Secondly, there is the problem of scalability. If we were to donate billions of dollars to people in Venezuela, there would be the problem of high transaction fees, and we already have an alternative called M-Pesa that solves this. Thus, we shouldn't be using this cryptocurrency that could have a fee of 20% when a lot of people are adopting it. Moving on to the contention 5 about remittances, they tell you that it's around 0.4%. However, as we mentioned before, as more and more people adopt it, remittance fees will increase. And secondly, they tell you that people can store it. However, in 2018, in one day alone, it dropped 80%. And as we mentioned before, according to Forbes 2020, cryptocurrencies are at its highest volatility. And if a person were to store their money in a bank, that means that their money, like their life savings, could just drop in one day, and it's not really beneficial. However, there is already mobile banking where you don't need the infrastructure like building a bank, where you can already have storing of money, which is already used in 7 African nations, while cryptocurrencies isn't used in any of them. They might come up and say Cointex is used, however, Cointex is not used in Africa. Thank you.
Any prep time?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna be thankful. So first, thank everyone that helped me to like prep for final and prep for all the elimination and prelim round. 2, thanks for like Speechcraft and all of my coaches that helped me to prepare for this topic. Lastly, thank Tien for like actually helping me to like be a better debater in general and teaching me the experience that I would never have without him. Okay, so
Thank you too.
okay, so everyone ready? My time starts now. Let's look at their first contention. They tell us that they're hacking and specifically 51% attacked. The first problem I want to point out is that in Crossfire, we asked them that what 51% attacks are happening. They say proof of work. But I would like to argue that not all cryptocurrency use proof of work like method. A lot of them use proof of stake. For example, we look at examples like Dash, like Ethereum, like NEO. We think this is simply a hasty generalization in the first place. But second, I would like to argue that this problem is already solved by the creation of Nash. According to Kylo Torpy 2019, with platform like Nash, users do not need to hand other custody of their crypto assets to a third party before they trade. Nash is a system of state channel smart contract to handle trades, and the system is currently live on the Ethereum and NEO blockchain. This means that they will be less likely for people to actually hack their money because they don't have it handed to the third party. It will be a direct transaction within each other. But secondly, like so their point about terrorism, right? They say that terrorism generally can use cryptocurrency as a way to fund their money. First, no evidence shows that terrorism rely on cryptocurrency for funding. According to Royal United Service Institute 2017, available information information on terrorism use of cryptocurrency is limited, terrorism already have a number of reliable financing systems which seems no sign of drying up, which means that even under their side of the house, even if they just ban cryptocurrency, this terrorism will still exist. They will still conduct attack because they simply have other alternative ways to gain their money. But second, I would like to argue that in general, the crime argument falls apart because cryptocurrency is traceable using software tools. According to FX3 2019, a recent report by Cephal Trade has said that 87% of cryptocurrency blockchain is traceable, which means that as long as law enforcement agencies want to trace down these criminals, they can. But let's look at a specific example. For instance, according to Cointelegraph 2019, the U.S. Department of Justice announced to shut down the largest two-day child sexual exploitation market called Welcome to Video. The sites offer child pornography videos for selling using Bitcoin. We see a specific example of people actually tracking down these crimes happening, so we would argue that this harm is mitigatable. Moving on, right? They tell us this general idea of cryptocurrency is extremely volatile is also a lot of rebuttal coming out from their side. First, new technology is always potential volatile due to speculation, and we think it will stable down a few times to pass. But two, let's go specifically, right? According to Bitcoin Volatility Index, when we estimate 252 days, we see that Bitcoin volatility is only around 3 to 4%. Rather than cherry picking one specific day coming out from their side, we think it's inherently unfair and abusive for them to say a specific one day and say that it's hasty generalizing all cryptocurrency are extremely volatile. But three, let's go specific cases, right? We think if individuals really want stable cryptocurrency, they can. For instance, they can buy stablecoin, which is a cryptocurrency that are pegged to other stuff such as US dollar or other cryptocurrency in general. We see examples like Tether, True USD, Gemini dollars, etc. But moving on, right? Four, we tell that in order for cryptocurrency to affect the monetary policies, it had to have dominant enough to be in the money market. But Bitcoin market capitalization is only around $100 billion. There's only 0.77% of the world money supply. When we look at gold, it's $7.7 trillion, which means that even if we have cryptocurrency, it's not going to largely affect the monetary policy because simply it can't. Moving on, right, to talk about the environment point. First, I would argue that 77.6% of global Bitcoin mining is powered by renewable energy, according to Hackathon 2019. But even if we look at the larger picture, right, not only look at greenhouse gassing, but energy consumption as a whole, we would argue that according to Bill Priest 2019, cryptocurrencies' energy consumption now represent only 0.3% of the whole world electricity use, which we would argue that is extremely minimum. Even if we ban cryptocurrency, all the impact will still be accessed because global warming is still going to happen. Now let's look at this specific argument, right? First, I have to point out that the alternative dimension the alternative dimensions simply don't work because we still see in this article that 2 billion adults are unbanked. If that is the case, why are these people still not helped? So we would argue that cryptocurrency is a potential benefit to that. Two, just onto the time frame, right? We would argue when you're deciding whether technology is beneficial or not, it's not only about the status quo, it's also about continuing the time frame of in the long term is it going to be beneficial or not, in order to have an estimated statement about whether it's beneficial or harmful, rather than just focusing on the status quo. I'll start.
Opponents ready?
No. Oh yeah. Did I say no? I'm so sorry. I said yes. sorry.
My time starts now. So you talked about using proof of stake, but doesn't that mean that people with 50% of the market share get to make the major decisions? Doesn't that mean that the rich people are going to be making the decisions?
Okay, first, I minimize your impact to only specific cryptocurrency because I tell you not all cryptocurrency use proof of work.
And then you
but
said,
two, even if that happened, we tell you that we have creations such as Nash that can prevent these things from happening. My question for you is,
you didn't answer my question on does proof of stake mean that the rich people get to make decisions?
No, because proof of stake doesn't follow the Satoshi Nakamoto invention of one CPU, one vote, so you can't. Okay, my question for you is that you say for countries facing hyperinflation, you can use US dollar, but we see a lot of countries banning US dollar during hyperinflation, such as South Sudan and Venezuela. How exactly can these people be helped?
In Venezuela, they are using the US dollar, but they're not using cryptocurrencies such as the Bitcoin. And then moving on, you also talked about no fiscal and monetary policies because cryptocurrencies would be not be expanded as much. Therefore, there wouldn't be the problem of no government regulation. So how do you reach any of your impacts if cryptocurrencies aren't going to be expanded.
No. I'm saying that when you compare it to the total money supply, cryptocurrency is not big enough to affect the monetary policy of a country, but it is big enough to help those very disenfranchised people in the society that you
Right
cannot
now,
access
your
on
contention.
side.
So your contention 1 is could help the banked. Your contention 2 is could
My
help
contention
the
2 is about
remittances.
2,000 people in Venezuela being feed by Bitcoin Venezuela. 2,
That's
I
your
give you,
contention 3, right?
my
And then
contention
your
3 is remittances.
So you need to expand this to reach any of your impacts today.
But you have to prove to me that expansion with me is large
That's
enough
what you
to
said.
affect the monetary policy
In
the
your
first place.
rebuttal
It
speech,
is
you
your
said
burden to
that
prove
like
your
the
point.
expansion of cryptocurrencies would mean that we can't use fiscal and monetary policies.
I didn't say that. I say the expansion means we can still use it. Right. Okay.
That's
clear
what you
enough.
said. Okay.
Okay.
Your question?
Okay. My question for you is that you talked about volatility in specific day. Can you ever give us a long-term estimated volatility? Because we checked Bitcoin index like yesterday, and it's still 3 to 4%.
Okay, we checked it today, and according to Forbes, it's at its highest.
It's at its highest in the
Yes.
history.
And,
Can you give me the evidence of that? Because I think history
Sure.
highest is like 2000.
Okay. Charles Board Forbes at
Yeah.
Bitcoin Rally this year, it's at its 30-day volatility climbs as well.
Yeah,
It's
mine
at-
is-
okay, and it rose to 62%, its highest since November 3rd, 23rd.
Wait. 62%. First, I would like to check the evidence
And then
in prep time.
secondly-
But 2, my evidence is about 252 days, which in the time frame is still
And-
longer than 30 days.
So in this time frame, you could have like minimum volatility, but then you just measure like this huge time frame. Thus, the volatility seems small, but then like during a 30-day time period, it's still pretty high. Secondly, your
Thank you.
evidence is on top of U.S. dollar.
For me, it's prep time to check. Oh.
We will do it before my speech.
Can I also check evidence for is Ethereum using proof of stake? You said that in your rebuttal.
Trade evidence.
Season's almost over.
Timing now.
There are plenty that use this system. Wait, can you
This is copy pasted. This is original. It's not her. It's a card collection.
It's nowhere in your card says proof of stake.
Let me get.
Yeah.
Just use your computer.
What's the link?
So you're gonna search it on Google now.
It's like there, but she can't open the link because she doesn't have Wi-Fi, and I don't have the slot.
Oh, so you don't.
It's not. 就给我link 吧，或者我给你 Wi-Fi。Sorry, Wi-Fi's an issue. How bad. NSDA, please provide us internet connection if you're going to let us use it during the debates.
Stop playing video games.
We're-
Or you cannot use it. Fun.
Oh, like she wants to see the original website.
Googling it.
No, it's okay. Like I have to.
Never mind, you can't find it.
Like we'll find it and then I'll talk about it in my summary. That's right. It's definitely there.
So it's 10 seconds spent on checking evidence.
I didn't see the evidence. Does it now?
Neither exists.
Yeah, he's gonna try to help us. I'm gonna send it. Like,
I think we could plug in there. I think 30 seconds.
30 seconds of your prep time. Hands off some computer. Start timing now.
Wait, no, I
Kepler 2.
Wait, is the model it's not saying it's being used. Can you
Okay, just doesn't matter.
That's 45 seconds in total.
Okay, thank you. Judges ready? Opponents ready? Opponents? My time starts now. Alright, I'd first like to talk about their case. Their contention one has been banking the unbanked. Again, we've already provided an alternative solution that is cheaper in mobile banking, which is, according to the World Bank, 32% of the world already has access to using mobile banking. And M-Pesa is used in Africa. They have not provided any evidence that cryptocurrencies are being used. They say it's possible. So drop contention one. Now, contention two is alternatives to collapse of economies. Well, right now, my partner already claimed that there are currently only 3 countries with hyperinflation, and they're claiming to help 2,000 people in Venezuela. Okay, yes, there are 2,000 people, but compared to our contentions, which I will talk about later, this is completely outweighed, and they said they would not expand, right? Okay, now the contention 3 is on remittances. Again, they said that there's a 10% transfer fee to go to Africa. However, we've already provided that trying to scale up Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency would lead to a 20% transaction fee, and furthermore, the conversion fees of going into Bitcoin and then coming back out of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency makes the fee actually 5 to 10%, which means that there's not that much of a difference. And furthermore, the infrastructure for fiat currencies is already existing. Now, I'd like to go on to our case. Okay, so first of all, they address our hacking by talking about proof of work versus proof of stake. However, they have no evidence that Ethereum is using proof of stake. Actually, this is a proposed solution in 2021 that has not been voted on. They're just talking about it, okay? And furthermore, Bitcoin and Ethereum, the 2 largest cryptocurrencies, are not using proof of stake. They're using proof of work. And we've already provided that Ethereum Classic, the 2nd largest, is vulnerable to such an attack with a $1.5 million investment leading to $1 billion in profits for hackers. Now, onto the point on criminal usage, they stated that terrorists had alternate funding and that criminals will not use it. However, we've already provided that 46% of Bitcoin transactions are illicit. And they say that they can trace them. However, in my opening speech, I already provided that they are switching to Monero and Dash, which are untraceable. They do not hold any information except for what is being, how much money is being transmitted, and therefore they can trace. Oh yes, there's money sent from A to B, but you don't know who is who's A, who's B, right? So tracing it doesn't matter if they don't know who it is and where they are. Now, onto the point of anti-regulation and volatility, we have provided the latest evidence from 2020 that shows that volatility is rising. They're claiming that eventually, at the start, everything is like, all the volatility will be high, but it will eventually go down. But people need their solutions right now. They're claiming that they can help all these people with remittances and everything. Well, they're saying it will eventually get better. That's not what these people need. People need reliable solutions such as mobile banking, which is already being used. M-Pesa is already being used in Africa by 37 million people. Now, finally, onto our environmental convention, they said that most of these cryptocurrencies use renewable energy, and they looked at energy consumption as a whole, talking about the bigger picture. However, we already talked about emissions. 13% of greenhouse gas emissions were done by Bitcoin alone, and it doesn't matter how big you scale it, because every dollar has more environmental and health costs. Thank you.
Any prep time?
Yeah, we want to check the 62% card.
Yeah, of course.
62%.
62% gold still in
Yeah.
today? Like, yeah.
You want the originals?
Is it copy paste? Okay, I'll look at this. Starting now.
No. It takes seconds, not your
That was 1 second.
It's like 20 seconds.
Oh, that's good.
Oh,
I mean, if you look better, it doesn't count.
yeah, I know. I mean, how can this quick?
Okay.
I'll take another 40 seconds.
Another 40 seconds.
20 seconds is enough. Everyone ready? My time starts now. Two major voting issues. First, does it actually help the poor? And second, given that, is it actually safe? So first, on helping the poor, right? The response to us helping unbanked is that there's mobile banking. Here's the thing, mobile banking follows the same regulations as traditional banking, which means you still have to have a minimum deposit, you still have to have specific documentation, which they still don't have, right? So they still don't offer the unbanked of the 2 million people. We say that those things are not necessary if you want to have the cryptocurrency account. So we say that we provide more financial access to these people. That's out of the way. Second, remittances, right? The response is that remittances it takes slower and we can't scale it up, right? So firstly, we say that the way it works is that it's based on bidding, so that you don't have to bid for a higher price if you're willing to plan out how you spend your money over time. According to the official Bitcoin website, they tell you that you have to, if you want it to be faster, you have to pay more money, but you can take it slower if you want. So it's not a mandatory fee. It doesn't have to be that high on their side. Thirdly, on hyperinflation, which is the most important point, right? All they said was that we don't have enough impact. Ladies and gentlemen, 2,000 people at least saved everything in Venezuela is not a small impact. I'd like to hear a better response from them on that argument. With that being said, we established that we do help the poor, both in cases of hyperinflation, in cases of unbanked people, and we do help save remittances for those people. Now, next, is it actually harm people given that we do help these people, right? First, on hacking and terrorism in general, right? Victoria already told you that generally speaking, we are able to trace these people who are committing crimes in general, and they say, and to which they responded, we cannot find these people, right? Well, here's an example of us being able to find the U.S. government finding people based on transaction. Cointelegraph in 2019 reported on October 16, the U.S. Department of Justice announced the shutdown of the largest to-date child sexual exploitation market called Welcome to Video. The site offered pornography with video sale for bitcoins. They're able to trace the transaction, and that led to 337 arrests and 23 victims being saved. That server is based in Seoul, South Korea. We tell you that we're able to even cross-border find the location of the servers. We're perfectly able to locate these things. And when they say they use different Bitcoin, different coins, we say that it we say that it functions the same way because it functions on the same technology, and all of them are permanently recorded on the blockchain technology. There is no difference. Next, they talked about hacking as well, right? The card explicitly says that proof of stake is a legitimate technology, even if it's not currently implemented. We see that the fact that there is a viable solution should be accounted for, right? If we can mitigate the harm and we can generally see a solution to a problem we're witnessing, we say that we should be able to mitigate a problem that should be taken into account while weighing the harms and benefits of a specific thing. Lastly, on volatility, we gave you specific number for an index. I just refreshed the webpage again. The 252-day estimate is 3.97%, and they said 30-day estimate is too high, was 2.94%. So it's not that bad. Lastly, on environment, Victoria told you already it's mostly by renewable energy. That should be accounted for, and it doesn't even include that much of an energy consumption. We are very much proposed. Thank you.
Go ahead, class 5. Do you want to sit or stand up?
We don't mind. We don't care.
Do you guys mind? Okay.
Starting now.
So you claimed one example of shutting down a child exploitation ring from the U.S. government. However, do you have evidence of substantially tracking these criminals down? Did you provide one example? Do you have a net statistic?
Well, the problem is, you cannot really get the net statistics. I think that's secure in the FBI. Normal people shouldn't access it. But I think it's already fair enough when we give you, we can give you more example of people arresting criminals if you really want to. I can read you more example if you want to.
Okay.
The point here is that it is feasible and it has happened before.
It is feasible, but very difficult.
I also said 86% of blockchain is traceable in my rebuttal. You never engage with that
we said it was traceable, but that's only the transaction. However, you have no information on the identity. Now, Bitcoin, there are some regulations on getting clues on the users. However, the Monero and Dash and private coins hold no information except how much money is going in, how much money is going out, and how much money is inside.
Yeah,
the same applies to
you have a question.
The same applies to Bitcoin. They're able to find them through Bitcoin.
No,
so we don't
Bitcoin
see a
has
distinction between any cryptocurrency in this case.
Also, can we
Then
move on?
46% of Bitcoin is being used.
Do you have a question?
Sure. So in your case, you talk about how volatility is rising, but the problem is, right? which one is worse, comparing to totally unbanked with like no accessibility or like some volatility, which is around 3%, but you have the access to the whole financial system?
So firstly, their evidence of 3% is volatility on top of the US dollar. That means it's 3% more volatile than the US dollar. And secondly, by showing your computer screen doesn't prove anything. So, and then volatility is detrimental to the poor people because they're storing their life savings in this bank account to store for the future. So we think that this has detrimental harm for these poor people.
It doesn't really help by saying our evidence is based on the volatility of US dollar. You actually have to prove to me it's like 62%. Like,
and according to Forbes, it is to 62%. You sort yourself with our evidence. And then moving on, you said like mobile banking uses a minimum amount, but M-Pesa doesn't. But your P2P network does require collateral, right?
If you're opening a bank account, you need to have a minimal deposit in that bank account in order for that account to be created.
But M-Pesa doesn't.
Wait. Just responding to your partner, but we also pointed out that if that's the case, why are 2 billion people still unbanked, still out of financial system?
Okay, my question was,
you need to really explain to me why is the status quo not working?
My question was, with cryptocurrencies, you need to use P2P networks. That means you need to put collateral onto the cryptocurrency exchange, and then you get money back. However, poor people don't have collateral.
Okay.
That's the problem with cryptocurrency.
I have a question. Okay, so you stated that 2,000 people are helped in Venezuela, and that is an impact. However, we've already provided evidence that the environmental impact on people in the mining areas would be more in terms of economics. So how do you respond to that, the impact?
First, I'd like to point out I never really hear any qualitative impact of how many miners died in cryptocurrency.
But I was respond to that. That's fine.
You have, let's see, 1 minute and 5 seconds.
1 minute, 5 seconds? Okay.
Opponents ready? Judges ready? Partner ready? My time starts now. We win under our framework that in the status quo we are providing more harms than benefits. All of their proposals are all in the future, and they give no evidence on how much is being implemented in the current status quo. Firstly, on scalability, their only response to this was they wouldn't expand. So how are you going to get any of your evidence, any of your impacts? Secondly, they give you a card that they can't find about proof of stake, just because when you search in Google proof of stake and Ethereum, that doesn't mean that Ethereum is using proof of stake. Secondly, onto volatility, we provide you a source from Forbes in 2020. However, they provide us no more credible or more recent source, and this is detrimental to the people who are trying to get banking access, because all of your life savings could be dropped by 80% in a single day, and that doesn't fit under their framework of trying to help the poor people. Moving on, we tell you that because of 51% of hacks, Ethereum could be hacked, and hacking has increased by 3.6%. They dropped this in their summary speech. Secondly, 46% of illicit transactions mean that $1.7 million are stolen from criminals each year, and criminals are jumping onto it faster than any of the poor people that they are trying to help are doing so. And this is facilitating so much crime, such as drug, child pornography, etc. And their only rebuttal is examples of Bitcoin being traced. However, we have already told you that private coins such as Monero and Dash are completely private and untraceable. There was no response to this. Thus, we outweigh because of our environmental impacts, because every dollar that you transact means that you have more than $1 on environmental and medical harms. It means that once we, because according to the Nature Journal, we will push the temperature of Earth past 2 degrees Celsius, and once we do that, there are irreversible harms that will be caused, and they will reach none of their impacts in the future. Proud to propose.
Use rest of our prep, which is
2 minutes and 20 seconds.
just
Okay, so ready? Starts. The first voting issue is about volatility. I think it's pretty clear that if we look specifically at our opponent's evidence on 62%, that's an independent crypto analysis, David Martin. But if you look at our evidence of Bitcoin Index, it's a website that systematically have a day-to-day update about the Bitcoin volatility. So I think obviously you have to buy our analysis about volatility, which means that we can access the impact of remittance and hyperinflation. In our case, saving thousands of people in places that they are systematically disenfranchised. They can have any alternative in cases like that. But our second voting issue is about those unbanked people, right? The only response coming out from their side is that maybe we can use other mobile payment and so on. But the problem is, what we see in the status quo is people are still unbanked, are still enfranchised, are still in poverty, but they really need to explain to us why are these alternatives not working. And when we ask them, they never actually give us any analysis. But moving on to the third voting issue is about crime in general, and there are illicit activities happening. First, about hacking, I think implicitly they dropped out our alternative when we tell you that we invent software tools like Nash that can actually help to get back money from hacking because we exclude the third party. We don't see any engagement coming from that. But two, let's say that generally speaking the terrorism point, we tell you simplistically clearly that terrorism doesn't rely on cryptocurrency funding in the first place, so they cannot access their impact as well. The third is most importantly, which is they never responded, is that we have a lot of evidence about traceability and how we have developed tools to trace down these blockchain systems, and 80% of blockchain is traceable, which means that they take out all the security concern on their side. But last voting issue is about climate change, right? You tell us that there's going to be environmental pollution overall, but the problem is we tell implicitly clearly that we look at the larger picture, it's only 0.3% of the global energy consumption, which means that even when we exclude that, there is no systemic changes in the current system. They cannot really achieve their impact about stopping global warming whatsoever. They never explain to that card. At the end of the day, I think what is most important is that the systematic disenfranchised people from the capitalist society that we're built in is the only chance to let them out. Thank you.
Thank you.
非常之精彩，看得出我们高中组的选手们可能更加老练一些。OK， 而且同时也是一个非常欢乐的辩论比赛。那我们现在给一点时间裁判来写评语，之后也是同样的有请5位裁判们给出他们对4位选手的提问。
入水。